Hello. So I'm back in the compost pile. I'm just re-uploading a video that I had uploaded last week. I think I'd left out a couple of bits which would have been useful to fill out the picture of what we do in terms of the composting. And we had a little bit of feedback on that video that, yeah, it was a bit sparse with information and kind of not very useful, which is not what we want. So, you know, I appreciate feedback like that. This is something that I'm really new to, making videos, not something I've done before. So any time that the videos are, you know, missing key bits that would be useful to be added on, or just aren't very good, you know, I appreciate you letting me know, because then I can make it better going forward. So I'm re-uploading with a little bit tacked on the front and the end to flesh it out and give a better picture overall of what we do to turn our spent mushroom substrate into compost. So, as I mentioned in the video, what we used on our first run of compost was compressed hardwood pellets that we rehydrated in order to inoculate with the oyster mushroom spawn and then grow mushrooms. So, hardwood pellets are predominantly sawdust, as you can see there. You know, that's basically sawdust. And you can see how dry that is. We've had a very dry few days here. Now there's a little bit of moisture in there where the mycelium is, but other than that, quite dry. Drier than we'd like, ideally. It's also very carbon rich. So, when you're making a compost pile, you need to balance your carbon with your nitrogen. C to N or brown to green. So carbon's brown and nitrogen is green. Common forms of nitrogen-rich things you'd add to a compost pile would be grass clippings, green things from the veg garden is, you know, the most of what goes in for us, really. Fresh manure. So we've got the chicken manure would come as a green. Coffee grounds, you can get them free a lot of the time from coffee shops, and that's a really good green. The way to think about it really with the compost pile is that carbon is the fuel source, and the nitrogen, the green, is sort of the accelerator, I guess. You know, you could dump 100% carbon in, just rotting wood, and it would eventually turn into compost. It would eventually turn into soil. You know, that's how nature does it. But just be slow, very, very slow. So we like to balance the carbon to the nitrogen in order to speed it up and make a better finished product for what we want. You know, more nutritious and better soil amendment for working with plants, working in market gardens, adding to fruit trees, whatever it might be that you want your compost for. So, given that we have put, I think it was 20 buckets of very carbon-rich material on there in with this spent substrate, what we need to be adding next and then mixing together is a similar ratio of nitrogen-rich material. So grass clippings, coffee grounds, and we want to be balancing that as evenly as we can. Where's my bucket? So the easiest way to do it, because the true ratio comes down to mass, and mass is obviously very hard to quantify on the fly. So easiest way to do it is just with volume. So if you're dumping a bucket's worth of carbon-rich material on there, ideally you want 2 or 3 buckets worth of green nitrogen-rich material on there to compensate, to speed up the decomposition of that carbon-rich material. But, you know, like with all things, it doesn't have to be exact. I think as long as you're trying to do 1-to-1 as closely as possible, at least 1-to-1 as closely as possible, and you can have a pretty productive compost pile. It'll be a bit slower than if you were sticking to 2 or 3, but 1-to-1 is fine. Another thing to think of is moisture. So we've got a roof on our compost pile. We've got open sides, so rain doesn't get in that way, and the roof doesn't come quite all the way to the front, so moisture gets in that way as well. But that's very dependent on local climate, your local conditions. For us, even though Obviously it's glorious at the minute, it's been dry for a good week. Usually we get too much moisture rather than too little. So I like to keep a roof on there. We have buckets just along the side of the roof there which collect water when it does rain, and I'll just dump the buckets on. What you ideally want is for when you take a handful of your compost to squeeze it and to get a couple of drops of moisture out of it. It doesn't want to be streaming out. It doesn't want to be bone dry. At the minute we are too dry. Largely as a result of throwing this all this spent mushroom compost on. You can see that we're not getting any moisture off that. If I squeeze it, no moisture is coming out. Now I can feel there is a little bit of moisture in there. It's not completely bone dry, which would be an issue, but it's not as wet as I like. So I'm going to water that pile quite deeply to rehydrate all of this old sawdust. If you leave it to go dry, it'll just slow down significantly. So we want to keep it the right ratio, as we discussed. We want to keep it as close to the right moisture levels as we can, without being too fussy. It doesn't have to be all that precise. But we want to keep it watered, and we want to keep it moving as well. When we're using large amounts of carbon like this, you're in danger of creating quite thick layers. So with a normal compost heap for a normal garden, obviously you're throwing on a bit of cardboard, you're throwing on a little bit of coffee grounds, throwing on some food waste in the kitchen. It's quite a natural process of adding bit by bit. Because we're doing things on a slightly larger scale here, we're in danger rather of having a large thick layer of carbon and a thick layer of nitrogen and so on and so forth. So turning it is very helpful. We'll be turning this pile now next week. We'll turn this 2 or 3 times before it becomes finished compost, just because, as I say, we need to be careful of creating defined layers. We want to keep it mixed up together. Again, that's a personal thing. If you're adding little bits by bits, and it's a little bit of green, a little bit of brown, a little bit of this, a little bit of that, which should be for most back garden setups, then that's fine. I wouldn't worry too much about turning it. Turning it once is going to speed things up. Any more than that is kind of unnecessary really for a small setup. But if you're doing it on a larger scale like this, if you're adding 10 buckets of spent mushroom compost and then adding, I don't know, 3 or 4 lawnmower tubs of grass clippings, then yeah, give it a turn. Just mix it in together. It'll lead to a quicker and better product, finished product rather. So what else to say? Another thing to keep in mind when it comes to spent mushroom compost, if you buy it, the common issue is pH balance. It can often be quite alkaline. So you want to be careful if you're going to use it on things like blueberries, rhododendrons, acid-loving plants, which we grow a lot of around here. We got quite acidic soil, so you want to be careful. With our hardwood pellets, it's actually more on the acidic scale, so it's more suited to our purposes really. So that's something to keep in mind when you're making your compost. So this is how much compost we create from our mushroom grow. This is 12 buckets, about every 8 weeks or so we're going through on our mushroom growing cycle. This is the inside of the bucket. You can see the mycelium's looking pretty healthy actually. I think if we dunked this, we've had 2 flushes out of these buckets. I think if we dunked them and rehydrated the straw and then brought them back out into a fruiting chamber to grow again, we'd probably get another good flush off it. But the next bucket's are ready to go into place, and space is the constraining feature for us at the minute. We've only got the 1 grow tent, which is set up, for fruiting. So it's best that we put it to the compost. This was one of the main aspects why we wanted to get into growing mushrooms really, because we need so much compost for the market garden, which is kind of the backbone of what we're trying to build here on the farm, that it makes sense to make as much of it as we can. And the waste product of growing mushrooms is this stuff, which turns into mushroom compost. So that was rehydrated pellets, rehydrated wood pellets. We've used straw on our latest batch, so it'll be interesting to see the difference. There's another bucket. As you can see, still plenty of life in that mycelium. If it was dunked, lovely sweet smell as well. I really love the smell of mushroom substrate. If that was dunked and rehydrated, I think we'd have another flush. Now, my goal is to set it up so we have enough room to do just that. And we can get 3 flushes out of each round of buckets rather than 2. And that should be set up ready for next month. As you can see, I'm just dumping them into the compost pile, smashing them up a little bit. It reminds me, I really need to get sides on this compost pile because it's starting to overflow a bit. Nice. Such a lovely smell. If you haven't grown mushrooms before, I would suggest it. It's a really interesting experience. And yeah, I like that sweet smell. It's not like anything I've smelled before. Really interesting. So as I say, our first batch here was grown on rehydrated wood pellets because that's what I could get at short notice when we decided to do it. Our latest one, we've switched to straw. Now, for the pellets, the wood pellets, we sterilised with boiling water while rehydrating it. So you need to rehydrate the pellets before you add in the mushroom spawn, and you can sterilise it at the same time. As you can see, there's a little bit of green mould sneaking into that one. A little less healthy, which shows that mycelium's getting a bit tired. The mould has snuck in, as it will do eventually, of course. Yes, when you're growing with wood pellets, rehydrated wood pellets is your substrate. You need to rehydrate it first and foremost, and you can sterilise it at the same time by using boiling water. So we have a very big brewing kettle that we can get the water to the right temperature, and then we dumped it into tubs to mix it up, rehydrate it, and sterilise it at the same time. I think if you're doing it on a small scale, it's quite a useful way to do it actually, because you just do it with a kettle or boil water on the hob, whatever it might be. Whereas if you're doing it at a large scale like we are, well, not large, but large enough to think about these things, using straw and pasteurising it in a lime bath rather than sterilising it with boiling water uses much less energy because it's just cold water with builder's lime added to it to bring the pH to a point where it pasteurises straw, and you're just dunking the straw in nets and removing it after a certain amount of time. You think about the energy used in boiling all that water as opposed to the energy used using cold water and lime. It's a world apart. Last one. There you go. Healthy mycelium. Healthy mycelium. A little bit of mould sneaking in there actually around the edges. You can see the white where it's really nice and healthy. And then the sort of blue-green patches there on the corner where it's been sneaking in. I'll just show you what the block looks like. So there it is. There's our compost. Oh, satisfying. Bashing up those cakes. So that is about 100 litres of mycelium, spawn and sawdust added to the wood, to the compost pile. It's really lovely compost. Anyway, so I just wanted to add on that to flesh out the video a bit more, make it a bit more useful rather than the first one uploaded. Apologies if you watched that first one and didn't think much of it. As I say, you know, do let me know if you think there's anything I can improve on with these videos, and yeah, I'll definitely take it into account and try and improve going forward. It's been really fun making these videos, but I'm already noticing things I've done in the first ones that I'd like to do differently going forward. So I guess that's the process, isn't it? Live and learn. So thank you for watching. Anyway, I hope that was useful, and I'll see you again.